So the Super Mario Galaxy trailer just came out, and it got me thinking about Super Mario Sunshine and the re-release of Super Mario Galaxy and the re-release of Super Mario Galaxy 2. It really does look like Super Mario Sunshine doesn't matter as much as I thought, because for this movie, it's quite strange that we have Bowser Jr. as an antagonist, but from him having his bandana, his brush, and assuming the weird Shadow Mario Inc. armor. He doesn't turn into Shadow Mario, but he has a very similar color scheme to Shadow Mario. It's setting the stage for Luigi's Mansion without Super Mario Sunshine, because if you don't know, Super Mario Sunshine is where Bowser Jr. made his debut and assumed the role of Shadow Mario via the power of the paintbrush. The reason why this is setting the stage for Luigi's Mansion is because we know the paintbrush is actually an invention of Dr. Egad, the same guy who makes Luigi's Poltergust in Luigi's Mansion. So it's weird now that we've just completely eliminated Super Mario Sunshine from this whole equation. And I just find that very interesting. Now, what's also quite weird about the Galaxy games in comparison to the other 3D Mario games. So your Super Mario 64, your Super Mario Sunshine, your Super Mario Odyssey. But when you look at Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2, they do stand out from the pack because no other Mario game allows you the same movement options that are present in the Galaxy games, in which you are moving around separate planetoids, in which you can go topside and underside in a very interesting way, and there are various puzzles and such regarding those movement options, in which the stage or the platform is more of a character than Mario himself, because instead of giving Mario a ton of movement options, you have a ton of movement options involving the stage itself, which is quite interesting because no other Mario game is like that and no other Nintendo game is like that. So it's interesting, after all these years, there's a big resurgence in everything Galaxy. The re-release of Galaxy 1 and now the re-release of Galaxy 2, along with a movie covering the events of those two games. So with that being said, I could see Galaxy getting a new entry in the future, but I do think things will be changed for the longevity of this potentially being a new franchise under the Mario umbrella, in a similar vein to Luigi's Mansion, because it's quite funny that not only did Super Mario Sunshine get its character stolen now by Galaxy with the events of this movie, but it's funny that Sunshine got its mechanics gutted for a new franchise entirely in Splatoon, because the whole big thing about Sunshine was the liquid mechanics involved in that game, but all the liquid mechanics have now been super repurposed into Splatoon, and there are even Super Mario Sunshine references in Splatoon, even up to Splatoon 3. So with that being said, I could really see them repurposing a lot of things in Galaxy for new games moving forward. I don't think we're going to leave the Mario umbrella, but I do think the main character of this new Galaxy format could be Geno. If you don't know, Geno was in a game originally for the Super Nintendo called Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. It got a remake of the same name for the Nintendo Switch. So in that way, it's in lockstep with Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2, in which it got a remake on the Switch family of platforms. But the reason why Geno sticks out is because in the context of the game, his species is that of a star. Now, the reason why this is interesting, and a lot of people have had many a fan theory about this, but stars could be reinterpreted in a bunch of ways in the modern Mario canon, because the most popular star beings that exist right now are the Lumas. We see Lumas 2 in the first Super Mario movie, and now we're seeing them again in the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and they originally debuted in Super Mario Galaxy. So that all makes sense. Now, if you could you please be my shooting star and hit that subscribe button and that like button if you are enjoying the video so far. Thank you so much. But to continue, what's so interesting too is that in the canon of Super Mario RPG, Geno says that he serves a higher power. That higher power has now been reinterpreted to be possibly Rosalina. This makes a lot of sense because for the longest time, Rosalina has always been interpreted as someone who's a bit of a deity-themed character, as she is significantly stronger than most of the Mario cast. You see this especially too in the new Super Mario Galaxy movie. She is not to be toyed with. So the theory goes, based on him saying in those two games that he serves a higher power, it's very possible that Geno serves Rosalina. And it could be possible in the modern day context of Geno that he is simply a Luma possessing a wooden doll. And seeing as how Lumas can fill themselves up with star bits and become planetoids, it's not out of the realm of imagination that a Luma could become a Pinocchio adjacent and possess a wooden doll and give that wooden doll a variety of abilities. Now, thematically, this is very interesting because the reason why I think Geno could be the new star of these new Galaxy themed games is because he already has a lot to him that's thematically appropriate for the main Mario cast. So he does have an Italian sounding name that does have the same phonetic cadence as names already present in the main Mario cast, such as Mario or Wario. On top of that, he could be based off of Pinocchio. And I think this is the reason why people consciously or unconsciously compare his tale to that of Pinocchio, and why people think he has some association with Rosalina. Because to give you a truncated version of the story of Pinocchio, a wooden doll is granted life by a blue fairy. Rosalina, in the same context, is very thematically similar to how the blue fairy is often represented in media. So that's why I can see why people often think that's a possibility that Geno could have some relationship to Rosalina, because the resemblance between them and Pinocchio with the blue fairy is very uncanny. But with that being said, Geno in his design is made up very similarly to what you would find with a plumber. He is wearing the same shoes, and instead of overalls, he just has a cape, but he does have a hat with a symbol on it, based on his real name not being made up of letters. It is quite odd that the symbol on his hat doesn't seem to be anything, but perhaps in the future that could have some sort of correlation with Rosalina, or maybe it doesn't mean anything at all. But the fact that he has a emblem on his hat does make him very similar to plumber characters in the Mario franchise. Now, when talking about the blue guy, the funny thing about Mario is that there is no blue guy in the main Mario cast, or at least there's not a blue guy that I would designate out of the characters that we have currently. I wouldn't say Kamek, for example, is a blue guy. Kamek is a named character who is just the representation of a enemy type in the Mario games, which are the Magic Koopa. So I wouldn't count him. But then looking at Rosalina herself, she too is not the blue guy. She is more so the cyan guy. Kind of like how in media, you will have a pink guy and a red guy. So in this case, Mario's the red guy and Peach is the pink guy. You sometimes have a light blue or a cyan guy who is different from the blue guy. So in this situation, when you're talking about Mario, there is no designated blue guy. So I could see Geno presumably in the future being that blue guy. So after that long art tangent, getting back to the idea of Geno being the main character of these Galaxy style games, I could see a lot of things that were present in Mario RPG just making their way into these types of games. Maybe instead of having Yoshi or what have you, he can turn into a bunch of different kinds of vehicles and use those forms to transverse the various planetoids that he's on, really making the most of the unique situation of the Mario Galaxy games in which you are on a planetoid and the planetoid really is the character of the level, not necessarily the character you play as. So I can see that being a thing, giving Geno different transformations, allowing him to turn to different vehicles, and those vehicles help him transverse around the area. Now, and seeing as how Geno's a bit of a gunslinger in Mario RPG, I could see that being played with a bit too in these Galaxy style games. Perhaps you use the gravity that's on the planetoid in which you shoot out perhaps a star bit, and the point is to shoot it off in a particular area only for it to swing back around and hit the target. Maybe that could be a possible gameplay mechanic in the future. And talking about star bits, I wonder, could you still keep the whole feeding Luma mechanic in this context? I think would make a lot of sense, but that is something that I'm not too sure on. It makes sense, but I'm not sure. But yeah, and I think it would make a lot of sense that we do utilize the power of transformation, because that's what Lumas are known for, transforming into stuff. So him transforming into a bunch of weird wooden vehicles or mecha make a lot of sense, because he technically is a wooden mecha being piloted by a Luma in this context. But with that being said, that's all I have for today. I am very excited for the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and I can't wait to see how things shake out. But with that being said, stay rosy.